Franklin Pierce was part of the Democratic Party and the 14th President of the United States. He was born in New Hampshire. He was entered into politics at a young age because his dad was a one-time governor. He served in the House of Representatives and Senate. He was appointed to the U.S. Attorney. He was a Speaker of the state legislature. He was a Speaker of the state legislature before winning election to the House of Reps in 1833. After 2 terms in House and 1 in the Senate, he went back to practicing law. He was very popular and outgoing personality, but he had very bad family affairs. His wife was ill and depressed all the time because their children died young and their last son died in a train accident. He served a full term from March 4th, 1853 to March 4th, 1857. He died October 8th, 1869 in Concord, New Hampshire after presidency. Liver cirrhosis after he took up drinking. Election of 1852. Franklin Pierce, who was a Democrat, alongside with William R. King, was running against General Winfield Scott, who was a Whig, alongside with William A. Graham, who was also running against Jane P. Hale, who was part of the Free Soil Party. After the election of the Whig Party quickly collapsed and the members of the declining party failed to nominate a candidate for the next presidential race, soon replaced by the Democratic Party's primarily opposition, the New Republic Party. Franklin Pierce had many accomplishments, including the Gadsden Purchase, which was U.S. bought territory from Mexico, later becoming parts of New Mexico and Arizona. It was named after James Gadsden when he negotiated it. It cost $15 million in 1853. It added 29,600 square miles to U.S., established the western boundary. He also accomplished the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1853, the Ostend Manifesto, which provoked a significant negative response. He was unable to diffuse the tensions leading up to the impending Civil War, and he was not a very popular president, and he was not reelected.
The Kansas-Nebraska Act was passed by U.S. Congress on May 30, 1854. It allowed people in the territories of Kansas and Nebraska to decide for themselves whether or not to allow slavery within their borders. The act served to repeal the Missouri Compromise of 1820, which prohibited slavery to the North. The act also opened up thousands of new farms and made a Midwestern transcontinental railroad. After the act was passed, pro-slavery and anti-slavery supporters rushed in to settle whether Kansas would be for or against slavery. They held an election to decide this. However, pro-slavery settlers were charged with fraud by anti-slavery settlers. This resulted in the establishment of 2 opposing legislatures within Kansas territory. Violence soon erupted by anti-slavery forces led by John Brown. This territory earned the nickname Bleeding Kansas. Bleeding Kansas, or Bloody Kansas, was a series of violent political confrontations involving anti-slavery and pro-slavery elements in Kansas between 1854 and 1861, including a bloody Congress. Also, President Franklin Pierce, in support of the pro-slavery settlers, sent federal troops into Bloody Kansas to stop the violence and to disperse the anti-slavery legislature. Another election was called to settle the dispute in Kansas between pro- and anti-slavery settlers, and once again, the pro-slavery settlers were charged with election fraud. As a result, Kansas could not become a state because Congress was unable to recognize the Constitution adopted by the pro-slavery settlers. Eventually, however, anti-slavery settlers outnumbered pro-slavery settlers, and a new constitution was drawn up. On January 29, 1861, just before the Civil War, Kansas was admitted to the Union as a free state. The Austin Manifesto, also known as the Austin Circular, was a document published in the New York Times written in 1854 by James K. Polk, the 11th President of the United States. This document describes the rationale for the United States to purchase Cuba from Spain while implying that the U.S. should declare war if Spain refused. This was another reason that he lost the support of his party in the North. After being published by demand of the House of Representatives, the Austin Manifesto was immediately denounced in both the northern states and Europe. The Pierce administration suffered a significant setback, and the manifesto became a rallying cry for anti-slavery Northerners. The question of Cuba's annexation was effectively set aside until the late 19th century.
James Buchanan was the 15th president and a member of the Democratic Party. He was considered the worst president ever and never married, so he had his niece as First Lady. Buchanan was also the last president born in the 18th century. Also, Buchanan let the states decide if they wanted to be free or not. He served a full term and owned slaves. He tried to keep peace between the North and South, but failed miserably by siding with the South more and leaving the country on the verge of civil war. In the election of 1856, Buchanan won with 174 electoral votes compared to 114 for Fremont and 8 for Fillmore. Buchanan had all southern states as well as California and some northern states. Some of Buchanan's achievements was he supported the Dred Scott decision that slaves were not citizens no matter what state they were in, free or slave, ordered an attack on Mormons in Utah, and wrote a memoir of his life in the third person. Buchanan finally left office in 1861 with the U.S. about to fall into civil war.
During the election of 1856, slavery was a major issue. This was the first time in which the political parties represented regions of the country and not a nation. Buchanan's presidency did not resolve the slavery issue. In fact, it tore the nation apart. The election demonstrated the extremity of sectional polarization in the U.S. national politics since the previous election, when the Whig Party had disintegrated over the issue of slavery and new parties competed to replace it.